first declared war through the constitutional process for the young republic. Although 30 years had passed since the end of the Revolution, the British continued to restrict trade due to their ongoing war with Napoleon's France, impress American sailors, and occupy territories in North America. The early war years saw the American military advance on various ports along the Great Lakes, burning and plundering towns and villages in Canada. In Canada today, school children are still taught the War of 1812 was a land grab by the U.S., and Canada was able to repulse this effort and actually won the war. Today, we still have many reminders of that period in our history. The most famous, of course, is the poem written by Francis Scott Key after his vigil in Baltimore Harbor during the British firing on Fort McHenry. The original Star-Spangled Banner currently resides in the Smithsonian's Museum of American History in Washington, D.C. But a replica of the 42 by 30-foot flag is hoisted every day over Fort McHenry. The sailing ship, the USS Constitution, still resides in Boston Harbor. The nickname Old Ironsides derived from the inability of English cannonball to penetrate her heavy oak planks. This U.S. frigate was originally commissioned in 1797. Dolly Madison, wife of the president, won her place in history by saving historic artifacts from the advancing British Army, including silver, china, documents, and even some red drapes at the expense of the personal property of Dolly and James. She is also given credit for saving the Gilbert Stuart portrait of George Washington before the home of the president was destroyed by a fire set by the British on August 24th, 1814. The British also destroyed the Capitol building and the Library of Congress. A young clerk at the State Department, Stephen Pleasanton, took it upon himself to save a copy of the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, Washington's farewell address, and numerous other original documents. This burning galvanized the American people with a new energy to defeat the British. The Treaty of Ghent, officially bringing the war to a close, was ratified by Congress on February 18, 1815. The peace treaty was actually agreed to in Europe in December of 1814, but due to the time needed to cross the Atlantic, one of the most significant battles of the war actually took place 2 weeks after the agreement on the treaty. Andrew Jackson and a contingent of one of the most diverse forces ever assembled routed the British at the Battle of New Orleans. Gunboats were being used for coastal defenses in 1813 when a young man from Virginia, John Holt, decided to join the Navy at age 21. He spent a year in service and mustered out in 1814, a few months before the end of the war. In September of 1814, a very young man joined the fight with a unit from Tennessee. Wiley Wilson was only 14 at the time, so could only serve as a trumpeter. At that time, a soldier got an enlistment bounty of $16, half on enlisting, the other half on mustering out. He was also eligible for bonuses, a certificate of faithful service, the equivalent of 3 months' pay, and 160 acres of land. We are grateful to Wiley and John and to all of our ancestors who helped to protect the freedoms which had been won not so many years before. The period following the war brought prosperity to the nation and saw former soldiers moving to their bounty lands in the West.